chairman, and my dear brothers and sisters. Today we have selected a very important subject, art of happiness. There cannot be any second opinion that we all are interested in happiness, to avoid suffering and to have happiness. Perhaps it appears to be the immediate and ultimate goal of life. Happiness may be defined at various levels. At the physical level, we call it pleasure or comfort, which is purely temporary. At the mental level, we call it peace and happiness. Of course, it's not purely temporary, but it is also temporary to some extent. And then when you go beyond mind, the intuitional and spiritual level, at that level we have the peace, joy, bliss, which we call it Param Anand. So ultimately, at all level, we are seeking happiness. So we can say that this is the ultimate truth, to avoid suffering and to have happiness. This is also fact that on this earth, hardly we find any person who is fully happy and living in a joyful and blissful state. There may be some person who may say, no, I am very happy, I have no problem. Physically I am hale and hearty, I have got good business, wealth, power, possessions, everything I have, I am happy. But there is no guarantee that if today is happy, tomorrow he will be happy. There is no guarantee. Because all these things on which our happiness is depending is all purely temporary. So if our happiness depending on wealth, power, possessions, name, fame is purely temporary. So today we have to consider as to what is the real source of happiness. We will go through it. Number one, it appears to most of the person, if we will have more and more wealth, we will be happy. This is a common phenomenon. If we have more money, if we have more wealth, we will be more happy. But I tell you the secret, the person who is having maximum wealth, even the entire world wealth is given to him, he can never be happy because it has its own limitations. So in place of wealth, if we can consider the wisdom, then perhaps we may have little bit happiness. Wisdom is the source for happiness. Wisdom in the sense Sophia, Theosophia, Theosophy, Sufi. So is the wisdom of the divine. If we have that wisdom, and brother was mentioning in his welcome address that oneness of whole existence, oneness of life, it's very easy to say. We can repeat it mentally and verbally that we all are one, but without having that wisdom, without having that realization of oneness, that is not possible. So through wisdom we can reach to a level of understanding, and wisdom is the pragya. When we have that wisdom, and wisdom is not a subject of mind, the informative knowledge is subject to the mind. We can gather certain information from the books, from the scriptures, we can hear from our senior brothers and memorize certain verses. That is not the wisdom, that is the information. So far as the information is concerned, we are well informed. Today, the development of mind is taken maximum. Each and every person is well informed, he knows, he must have read much more scriptures. But unfortunately, some of us, we are having very little wisdom. So we have to understand, we have to go to understand this wisdom. A little book, Theosophical Society literature, there is one little book at the feet of master. It mentions very important points. It says there are only two kind of person, those who know and those who do not know. Those who do not know, they hanker for wealth and power. And those who know the God's plan of evolution, which is so wonderful, so glorious, that they can't help but working for it. So again, a distinction has been made between wealth and wisdom. If we are having little wisdom, if we are understanding, then perhaps we are opening the door for happiness. This is one factor. In place of wealth, let us consider the wisdom. Without wisdom, happiness is not possible. Second factor, most of us, we are hungry for power. We want to become powerful person. First we want to become a very rich, powerful man, minister, king, and limitless power. But I tell you, the peace or happiness does not lie in power. But power versus peace, if we can have the mental peace, through wisdom, if we can reach to the calm state of mind, through wisdom we can reach to the state of mental peace, which is most important. So power versus peace. In place of power, if we are considering peace, perhaps we are opening another gate for happiness. Without peace, without having a peaceful mind, without having a calm and quiet and a balance, equilibrium state of mind, samatvam yoga uchyate. Even our Gita also says, samatvam yoga uchyate, samatvam bhav. Treating everyone as equal, my friend, my brothers. Not considering ourselves we are something great and others are not great. Each and every person sharing one and the same life. So this is second point. Power versus peace. The third point is, most of us, it appears to us that if we gain more and more, if we have more possessions, we will be happy. If we are gaining maximum, then we will be happy. But I tell you, the happiness lies in the reverse gear, not in gaining, not in grab and greed mentality, but in giving and sharing. If we can consider this factor of giving and sharing, then we are also opening another gate for happiness. Without sharing, whatever we have, it may be a material wealth, it may be a knowledge, it may be a wisdom, it may be our peace. We have been told the peace that passeth understanding, it abides in the hearts of those who are living in the eternal. Those who are living in the eternal, they can also share their peace and wisdom. Most of us may be ready to share our whatever we have. But if we do not have the wisdom, we are foolish. What we will share? We will share our ignorance, we will share our foolishness only. So before we can share that wisdom, before we can share that peace and understanding, we must have that understanding with ourselves. A blind man cannot lead a blind man. In one of the Mahatma letters, it has been stated by the teacher, spiritual teacher, he says, be a light pole for others. Be a light pole for others, but before showing that light to others, put your own character in that light. So we have to put our own character. We have to learn. If we have acquired certain peace, some wisdom, some understanding, then only we can share. On the other hand, greed and grab mentality is going on throughout the world. Even the kings are not happy. They want to grab more and more land of other country. So this competitive world, everywhere we find the greed and grab mentality going on. But the secret of happiness is not in gaining and grabbing, but in giving and sharing. You may consider this factor also. The other factor, some of the persons are suffering because of the physical disease. All over the world, people are suffering. Some are suffering with high pressure, others with sugar, others with heart problem, others with cancers, others have some neurological problem. And we are applying medicine. Through medicine, you can postpone the disease for some time. You can suppress the disease, but it cannot be permanently cured. If you can practice meditation, I used to tell my student, medicine versus meditation. If you can practice meditation, and during the state of meditation, when you enter into a state of silence, when there is perfect silence, inward and outward silence, there is no chattering of the mind, there is no emotions and feelings or physical action, but you are in a state of witness, you are in a state of silence, and you are very much alert, awake and aware from inside, then you perceive certain things, then you perceive reality. And when you perceive that reality during that meditation, about which brother was mentioning oneness oneness cannot be perceived, oneness cannot be experienced at the physical level, at the astral level, or at the mental level. One may have the great deal of information, he may have read many scriptures, memorized certain verses from the scriptures, but he cannot have that realization of oneness. The realization of oneness is possible only when you enter into the arena of silence, which is really meditation. And deep state of meditation is samadhi. When we enter into deep state of meditation, when mind is calm and quiet, you have a balanced attitude, equilibrium, equipoise state, then in that harmony, when the purification is there, when the harmonization is there, and you are very much alert and awake during the state of meditation, then you perceive certain truths. Then you perceive and realize and feel that there is in those moments of meditation, there is an expansion of consciousness. Now we are limited, we are living in a cocoon, this is my body, this is my mind, my name is so and so, I have this much, that much, I am learned, this and that, all zero. The moment I break away all this wall of I-ness, the sense of separation, you know, the root cause of suffering is the sense of separation. The root cause of all problems is sense of separation. The sense of separation is the only malady. I repeat, the sense of separation is the only malady, and sense of unity is the only remedy. If one can sense, one can realize the sense of unity, and the sense of unity, the sense of oneness, the sense of oneness or wholeness of life, it is possible only during meditation. Now let us go further. To the ordinary man, it appears that if we are able to fulfill our desires, we will be happy. But I tell you, the secret is somewhere else. The desires can never be satisfied. If you fulfill your desires, you can never be happy. Even if you fulfill the particular desire because you wanted it and you got it, then the real suffering will start. Let us take an example. Suppose I desire that I should have a son. I should have my own son. There is no bad desire, but it's a desire. If I am unable to get this son, I am unhappy, naturally, because of the desire. My desires are not fulfilled. If I got it, son, for the temporary, for this short period, it appears as if I am happy. But the next moment, if the child is ill, he is suffering with a chronic and incurable disease, then I am miserable. And by chance, if the child or the son leaves the physical body, passed away to the formless world, then I am miserable. So the center which appears to me as a center of happiness became the center of misery and unhappiness. So the desires are never satisfied. So the happiness does not lie in fulfillment of the desire, but in transcending the desire. You reach to a state when you do not desire at all. And this is possible. Because we desire certain things, we feel limited, we feel imperfect, we feel as if we don't have, we are living in a cocoon. So howsoever rich, howsoever powerful, howsoever possessive we may be, but still it is limited, we cannot be overall. The moment when we break the wall of separation and we don't desire, but we become one with the whole cosmos, one with the universal life, then the limitations, the bondage, the imperfections break away and you become limitless, boundless, omnipresent, omnipotent and omniscient. This is our original nature. We are not the body, we are the soul, we are the Atman, we are the Ruh inside the body. And that Ruh is the part and parcel of that ultimate reality. The individual consciousness is the part and parcel of the universal consciousness. And part, not separated part. It appears to be as if it is a part, but it's not separated. Let us take an example. This finger is a part of the body, but it's not separated from the body. Normally sometimes we say soul is just like a drop in the ocean and the drop has taken out of the ocean. No, it cannot be taken if there is no place, there is no vacant place everywhere. That ultimate reality, that universal consciousness, that universal cosmic intelligent energy filled everywhere is omnipresent, omnipotent and omniscient. There is no place for taking a part of it away. It's within that ocean, drop within the ocean, spark within the flame, the part within the body, within the whole. It appears, we call it part because apparently it's functioning as if it's an independent or individual soul. Let us take an example, the electric energy. The electric energy in the whole house is the one. But for the practical purpose, we create points in our switchboard. One point is connected with the fan, another point is connected with the tube light, another point is connected with the refrigerator, one point is connected with the heater, and there is a lot of manifestation of that same electric energy. And this electric energy here and the electric energy in the powerhouse, one is the same, without broken, its continuity is there. So if we can understand that and have that realization, that understanding, then perhaps, and this realization, this understanding can never come so long we are desiring certain things. When we desire, we feel lacking, we feel, oh, we are limited, we are in bondage, we should have more and more. And the more we have, the more dissatisfied we become. This is the rigmarole. If you are thirsty, if you drink the water of the ocean, the more you drink the water of the ocean because it's salty, the more thirsty you become. It's just like, and ultimately a point will come when your stomach will be burst. Similarly, the desires are never satisfied. Desires can never be fulfilled. Even if it is fulfilled for the temporary period, it is a cause of suffering. Even Buddha said the same thing. Desire or trashna or ambition are the root cause of suffering. If we can understand the nature of the desire, if we can understand the nature of this trashna and ambitions, perhaps we can transcend it. So this is another point to be considered, that though it appears to us, if we are able to fulfill our desires, we will be happy, but it is the other way around. Desires can never be satisfied, desires fulfillment, desire can never give us satisfaction or happiness. But if we can transcend the desire, if we can go beyond the desires, and a state when we do not need anything, we are happy within our own self. And I tell you, the real self, the real man, the real entity inside, we call soul or Atman, is a perfect, is one with the universal consciousness. Only when the desires and ambitions, trashnas, they come in the way, then we create a division, we create a psychological division. Oh, I am separate and he is separate, I am separate and my Lord is separate, and my soul is separate, your soul is separate. But in fact, my soul, there is no such thing as my soul or your soul. Atma and the Paramatma, external agency, there is no such thing. It's all pervasive, consciousness, here, there and everywhere. That's why we have been told is omnipresent, omnipotent and omniscient. Sarvagya, Sarvyapak and Sarvshaktiman. And that Sarvagya, Sarvyapak and Sarvshaktiman is seated in our heart. It's not that we have to search it for anywhere in the seventh plane or सातवें आसमान पर कहीं जाके खुदा को तलाश करना पड़ेगा. It's not. It is very much here. If you can't see, which is nearest to us, we can't see in others. So this is also one of the points for happiness. We should consider it. Then another point is, most of us, there is a natural tendency in all of us, in all living creatures, that the three natural tendencies: self-protection, self-expansion and self-preservation. I repeat, self-protection, self-preservation and self-expansion. These are the three natural instinct in every living creature. He wants to protect himself. No, nothing should harm me. I should be well protected. I should maintain my eye. This is natural tendency. And there is also preservation, self-preservation. I want to preserve myself. If some energy has been invested or wasted, I want to take something more inhale so that I can preserve that energy. And there is also third tendency of self-expansion. I am one, I want to become two. I am one, I am not satisfied, let me marry, let me have two. And even then we are not satisfied, we are two, let us have another child. So there is expansion. So this self-protection and self-preservation and self-expression is the natural process of life. And we are seeking happiness in fulfilling these tendencies. And I tell you, the secret lies not in self-preservation, but secret lies in self-destruction. Annihilation of the self, annihilation of the I-ness, no protection of the self. Let us open to the air, let us open to the universe, cosmos. There is no such thing as I as separate entity. It appears as if I am a separate entity, but in fact it's all pervading, all pervasive universal consciousness. And only a focus, only a center has been created in my heart center. And that center or focus through which I am functioning, it appears to me as if it is separate. In fact, all the centers, all the focuses in the universal life are not separate from each other. They are not separate from the universal life, universal consciousness, but all the centers, you call it Atma or Jivatma, all the Jivatmas, Atmas are deeply rooted in that universal consciousness. This is the highest achievement. And this achievement, complete annihilation of the self, I-ness and I-lessness. And I tell you, the greatest qualification, the greatest virtue in the world is love. And you cannot have the love so long there is I-ness. If I am there, I cannot love other person. When there is absence of I, then only there is a natural flow of love. There is no sense of separation. There is a oneness. The other person is not the other person, but it's a part of myself, is myself. Then that understanding, that wisdom dawns, then there is a natural flow of love and compassion. And when we are in that state, then perhaps we can be in a state which is completely full of happiness, bliss, joy and Paramanand. Now the question is, we have discussed 6-7 points which are helping us to understand this state of happiness. Say for example meditation, for example I-lessness, destruction of the self, separate yourself, realization of the unity of life. How we can have it? It's a challenging task for us, right sir? It's not easy. As brother rightly pointed out, as a lip service we can say no, we all are one. I am ready to share my everything with my brother. So like there is I and my brother, so like there is I and he, I cannot share. Even if I share, I will create a bondage for me and I will create a problem for other brother also. The real sharing will takes place automatically when there is absence of I. When we feel that we all are common, we are sharing the common property. This is not my wealth, this is not my thing, this is not my wisdom, but this is the common property, common wealth, and we are just sharing it with our friends. So this is the crux of the problem. Now let us consider what best we can do. As we have seen, at the verbal level, at the physical level, we cannot realize this oneness, which is the most essential thing, which is a challenging task. At the astral level, at the emotional level also, there may be a little bit expansion of the self, but still we cannot realize that oneness of life at the astral, at the emotional level. We may be emotionally devotional, we may have the emotional devotion for the Lord, for the East, for our Guru, but still it is limited because emotions cannot take us very far. At the mental level also, thought, thinking, the speculations, the imaginations, these are merely imaginations and thinking. If we are just for the mental level, verbalizing, thinking, having a concept of reality, having a concept of unity of life, having a concept of love, having a concept of Atma and Paramatma, this concept is not going to liberate us and have that realization of the oneness, because this realization of oneness, the wholeness of life, is not possible at mental level, it's not possible at astral level, it's also not possible at the physical level. Then what we have to do? We have to transcend these three levels. We have to go beyond physical, we have to go beyond emotional, we have to go beyond mind. And I tell you, all the sainted sages have given this clue. They say, if you can be silent at the mental level, if you can silence the mind, if the mind is silenced, you enter into arena of silence when there is an inward and outward silence, when there is no chattering of the mind, there is no emotions, there is no physical actions, but you are very much alert and awake from inside as a witness in that perception state. But unfortunately, most of us are in a state of action. To be in a state of perception is the most difficult thing. Let me give you an example. Suppose I tell you, you perform some yogic exercise, physical yogic exercise. It's very easy. If you are unable to do it, I will give the demonstration and you can do it. Breathing in, breathing out, or some physical exercise, because it's an action to be done. But if I tell you that you repeat some mantra, it's very easy. You can repeat some mantra. I mean, the child of second, third class, he can also repeat the mantra. If I tell you, don't repeat it verbally, but repeat it mentally, that it will become little difficult for you, but still, some of us may not be able to repeat it mentally because physically it's easy for repetition. And if I tell you, even don't repeat it mentally, don't do anything, just be alert and aware and attentive, most difficult thing. To be in a state of perception, the most difficult thing. And howsoever difficult it is, we have to be in that state. Without being in a state of perception, we cannot perceive the reality. We can't have the spiritual or intuitive perception. And without having the intuitive and spiritual perception of oneness of life, the wholeness of life, the love, the compassion, the service, and the happiness, all dream. So we have to prepare ourselves so that we can enter into that silence. Now what best we can do? The similar question in Why So Silence, I will just take the help from the masters. A disciple asked the master, he asked, "O Gurudev, what should I do to reach wisdom? O wise one, what to gain perfection? O wise one, how I can enter into arena of silence so that I can have the wisdom, I can have the pragya?" And the master replied, "Search for the spiritual path, for the beginners. Search for the spiritual path. But before you take the first step, be of clean heart. Be of clean heart." So the purification, the purity of heart and purity of mind is a must. Any amount of memorizing certain verses won't help. But if we are really pure at heart, we are pure at mind, and we are calm and quiet, it will help us. So master says, before you take the first step, be of clean heart. And before you start on the journey, learn to discriminate between real and unreal, between head learning and soul wisdom, between doctrine of I and the doctrine of heart. Most of us, we know the head learning. So much head learning we have done. We have collected so many informations and filled in our brain box. We can give a oratory lectures, but it's very difficult for some of us to really have that wisdom, to really have that clean life, a clean life, an open mind, a pure heart, an eager intellect. These are the steps suggested by the masters. So until unless we know the difference between head learning and soul wisdom, head learning is a borrowed knowledge, is just informative knowledge. But this informative knowledge is not going to help us in any way. If this head learning, if this informative knowledge is put into practice and it is transmuted into wisdom, then it will come for our help. Then perhaps we may be able to open the door for happiness, the ultimate realization. So this is the first step. Clean life, clean heart, purity of mind. And the second step is the discrimination. We must know, not on the basis of books, not on the basis of scriptures, not on the basis of what we have heard from our senior brothers, but we must understand what is real and what is unreal. The entire world, the phenomenon world, the material world is purely temporary. Your wealth, your power, your possessions, your positions, your name and fame, purely temporary. If you are depending on this, you must know there are certain important things, more important than these things. If you can awaken your discriminative faculty and you know your limitations and how to break away those limitations, those impediments, those factors which are creating impediments between the individual consciousness and the universal consciousness, then perhaps we may open the door for the further realization. So the discrimination is a must. Without discrimination, without insight, and this discrimination cannot be borrowed from the books. From the books, from the scriptures, we can borrow certain do's and don'ts. But that do's and don'ts will not help us because each and every circumstance, each and every problem is quite new. We have to take the decision on the spot itself. A spontaneous decision. And that decision, what should I do, what should I not do? What is right, what is wrong? What is real, what is unreal? What is essential, what is non-essential? What is less essential and what is more essential? This decision has to be taken on the spot. And who is the guideline? My own insight. You call it discrimination faculty, you call it understanding, you call it insight, or you call it spiritual perception, you may give it any name. So that perception has to come from the depth of our own being. So this is the next point. And when we have this clear-cut, crystal clarity, what is right, what is wrong, what is real and what is unreal, what is futile and what is real, important. The things which are futile, the things which are purely temporary, the things which are purely useless will drop automatically in the light of things which are more important. So with the help of this discrimination faculty, with the help of this Vivek Buddhi, we will know what is to be left and what we should gain. So we will develop the detached attitude, because we are too much attached in the world. We are too much attached with the name, with the fame, with the position, with the possessions, with the you see, everything. Even sometimes we are attached to the knowledge. Some person say, oh, I am very learned, I am very qualified. So he is attached to his, so he has created ahankar in his. The way is that we have to eradicate this sense of separation. We have to melt this I, and by education, by degrees, by possessions, by wealth and powers, we are strengthening the self. Now, in place of going in the right direction, we are going in the wrong direction. If you do not want any power, if you do not want any possessions, we do not want any wealth, even if it is given to us, then we will make best use of it, because we don't want it. I don't want power. If power is given to me, I will use for the welfare of the humanity. I don't want wealth. If wealth is given to me, if wealth comes to me, because nature, great nature, the great nature will give its key of the treasure to the person who is really detached, who has no ambition, no desire, no gain for the power, for the gain, all these things. So if in that case, if we'll have some power, even Light on the Path also says that in the beginning they say, kill out the desire for comfort, kill out the desire for life, kill out the desire for ambition. He says, Master says, but in the end he says, desire which is beyond you, desire which is within you, desire power ordinate, desire which is unattainable. So this desire is not the ordinary desire. When we are having that sankalp shakti or that willpower is coming from the center of our own soul. So that desire is not the ordinary desire. When we are desiring to realize for the realization, so it's not an ordinary desire. It's a will to unite with the whole cosmos, will to unite with the universal consciousness. When this stage comes, then it becomes very easy. So we have been discussing what are those points, the self-purification, and I tell you, the self-purification is not a work of a day. It's not a work of a day or a month or a year. It may continue the series of life. It's very easy to say, no, I am very pure, I am very clean. But the Master will come and he will inspect our heart. If you find it's utterly pure, then only we can say that, yes, my heart is clean and pure. Otherwise, we have so many faults, we have so many shortcomings. Even we may not desire for wealth and power, but there may be a desire for appreciation, there may be a desire for recognition. So even that desire must go. Any desire which is related to the separative self must go. So that is a state of desirelessness, or we call it vairagya. And then, when you have a clean life, a purified life, a harmonized life, a calm and quite balanced attitude, a discrimination faculty, and the detached attitude from the world, mundane things, then the glimpses will start coming to you. Then you will know that what is the other person. The other person is not the other person, is the part of self. Because the desires, the ambitions, the attachments, they are creating impediments in the way. And when we do not have any desire, we do not have any attachment, we have the crystal clarity, the expansion of consciousness, and in that expansion of consciousness, we feel that the other person is not the other person, but is part of me-self, he is me-self. And then, because of that understanding, the natural flow of love and compassion. And when there is a natural flow of love and compassion, it is expressed in the form of service. Prior to that, service may be an imposed service. We do not know why should I help the other person. Even if I help, then I take a credit of it. I am helping with this hand, and I am looking to the photographer so that my name may come in the early newspaper that I have done such a good work. This is not the service. This is not this. So the service in the ordinary sense, and service which is a natural flow, which is natural outcome of the love and compassion. And I tell you, the service is the byproduct of love and compassion. And love and compassion is the byproduct of wisdom, and wisdom is the byproduct of meditation, and meditation is the byproduct of a particular way of life. So there is a system, there is a series, there is a virtuous circle. You all of a sudden you cannot pluck the flower, you cannot have the flower of the or the fruit of the love. You have to go in a sadhana. It is a long practice. And I tell you one more thing, when you are really sincerely and seriously approaching this path, approaching this realization, then there have been many saints and Sufis and Mahatmas and adepts and Avtaras, Ali, Wali in this earth, those who are waiting for such a candidate. And when they find, oh, here is a candidate who is really troubling, he is trying to unite, he is trying to do the highest thing, then they will come and help the candidate. And then the process of initiation, the process of Diksha, the real teacher and the discipleship service, this system will start. Then when you see the power of the master, when you see the power of the Sufi saint, when you see the power of that Ali, Wali and Avtaras, then you just, prior to that it was just a devotion at the emotional level. I do not know who the masters are, I do not know what the God is, I do not know what the Paramatma or Allah is, I am just repeating words. At that level the devotion was at the emotional level. But when I really see, when I experience that there are individuals, there are individual consciousness of individual souls who are much more greater than us, and we are just a speck of dust in front of them, then there is a natural flow of devotion for them, devotion, reverence to them. And when there is a reference to them, then the natural flow, their love and their wisdom and their truth will come to us, they will help us. So we call it the path of initiation. And when we have practiced all these things, we are leading a particular way of life, a purified life, a life of love, a life of compassion, a life of affection, a life of cooperation, and a life of detached attitude, a life of discrimination, right? And a life of service. Then we are in contact with the masters, then it will be very easy for individual to enter into meditation. Without laying down this foundation, the meditation is not possible. If you just close your eyes and you say, no, I am just meditating, what you are meditating? You may be thinking something else. So the silencing the mind is not so easy. It's the most difficult thing in the world. And I reminded when Arjuna asked the same question from Lord Krishna. He said, Arjuna, he was a Maharathi. He could control the thousands and thousands persons in the battlefield, but he could not control the mind. And he said, the mind, the movements of the mind is so powerful that it is very difficult to control it. The Lord Krishna said, no, though it's very difficult to it, but you can control it. You are not only the physical body, you are not only the sense. Beyond sense, there is the mind, and beyond mind there is intuition, and beyond intuition you have the spirit, the spiritual self, and that spiritual self, that spirit is the Paramatma or the spiritual self itself. If we know our powers, if we know our this understanding, then it will become very easy. So this is a systematic process. Then you enter into meditative state. You cannot silence the mind. Forcibly you cannot silence the mind. Like forcibly you cannot curb the desire. You cannot suppress the desire. If you suppress the desire, it will create more problem. You had a desire and you have suppressed it. You feel, oh, I am very happy, I have suppressed the desire, but in future again it will come because it is not fulfilled. So neither fulfillment of the desire is a solution, nor suppressing of the desire is a solution, but transcending the desire, understanding the nature of the desire, and go beyond the desire. There are certain higher things which can be seen, which can be perceived. So if you have that type of life, let me give an example. Suppose there is a candle flame, right, and it is wavering. Flame is wavering because of the air is coming from the window. If you want to catch the flame, you cannot catch the flame by hand. Even if you put the chain around the flame, even then it will waver. What you do, you find out the cause. You found out the cause is that because air is coming from the window, you did not do anything with the flame, you just close the window and the flame will become static. We have seen. Similarly, you can't stop the mental chattering of the mind. You have to find out the cause of the mind, the windows of the mind. The windows of the mind are senses. Our senses are having the attractions and repulsions. Some of them are ignorant. We do not know why this has happened. We are in suffering. We are in grief. So if we understand the things, We have the discriminating faculty, and because of the discrimination, we have attained a stage of equilibrium, a equipoise stage. Then mind is automatically silent, and when there is automatic silence, then you enter into silence, and you are very much. It's not sleeping if you are, because there is a difference in sleep and meditation. Let me give you an example. When you are going to sleep on the bed, if some thoughts are going on and coming and going, you can't sleep. A point will come when the thought will become standard still. When thought will become standard still, you will go to sleep. If you are worrying, there is a tension, there is a stress in the mind, thinking anything about remembering, you can't go to sleep. This is a general phenomena. But a time comes when thought will become standard still, you go to sleep. But here in meditation, the thought has become silent. There is no chatting of the mind, but you have not gone to the sleep, but you are very much alert, awake and aware from inside to perceive the higher things. That is the real meditation. So in meditation, though outward silence is there, the inward silence is there, but in that silence, you are very much alert, awake and aware. And in that awareness, in that alertness, the spiritual perception takes place. And that spiritual, whether you call it spiritual perception, or you call it the spiritual realization, or you call it the expansion of consciousness, that will take away and it will break away all the war of sense of separation. Then you will see there is no such thing as separative I or a you, but we all are one. When this realization comes, perhaps that is the real achievement of the life. If we have this state, then everlasting happiness. You enter into bliss, you enter into joy, because you become limitless. Now I am limited, living in a cocoon, me, my and mine. But when there is a my, I, my and mine is broken away, and I am one with the universe, and universal consciousness, and that universal consciousness is limitless, boundless, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, you also become that. Your original nature is that. When we are in that state, then we are in a blissful state. We are in a real eternal happiness. This is the art of happiness. Simply having certain thing, having some money, some power, and having some occasional happiness is not at all a happiness. This is purely temporary happiness. If you are really interested in happiness, let us work out, let us do something, homework. Then sure, it is a system, and it's scientific. It's not that someone has said, or I am telling you, or you have heard from somewhere. This is a system. If you really enter, because this is scientific, there is logic in it. When there is an impediment between me and you, there is a barrier. There is a barrier between me and my Lord, my God. And the barrier is the desires, the ambitions, the attachments, the wantings, the trishnas. You see, and when we break away all those desires, those barriers, thought, silence, then you are one with the whole cosmos. And when you are one with the whole cosmos, with the whole existence, then there is a bliss, joy, and grace.
Yeah, this is the thing what he has said, and in his scripture, and particularly in Indian context, the Buddhism is very much vocal. I have seen Buddhist books like the Nagarjuna's philosophy, they have got very nice explanations, like Radha Krishna's explanation, very easier. So what is my question? I think everyone will fall into that problem. He have said live it. He have said separate it. He have said desire, take it off, and come into silence and try to hold in silence, etc. Greatest problem comes in the technique. The individual, in the meditation, individual must know how to go step by step. How to go step by step upward. When he will get liberated from all the temporal arena. What we have seen in the different religious or the groups, somebody is using the music, and that is whether drum beating or chanting or whatever the repetitions, that is the way of taking him up by separating him, coming into a mood or particular mood. So for these things, what type of technique you advise? Because I said he'll see go to dhyana and he'll go to sleep, and most of the thing will happen because he'll be at a loss. He do not know who is he, because he has to get with him unless and until that he factor is known to him, he will be at a loss all the time. So here the technique.
But the thing which is not to be done, but you have to be in a state of perception. Nobody can tell you how to be in that awareness of state. So if you are asking for the technique, for the process, for the method, for the system, the method, the system, the technique can be for a particular action of yoga. But in that state in which there is a perfect silence, in which you are not doing anything, but there is a state of beingness. For the state of beingness, there cannot be any technique. But somehow, what best we can do to be in that state of meditation, right? Which I already narrated, I don't want to repeat. If we have laid down a foundation, if we have laid down a way of ethical living, a moral living, a clean life, a life of detachment, a life of discrimination, a life of love, a life of cooperation, a life of understanding, and this gradually we have done it, right? If we have acquired these required qualifications, then it will be easy to enter into meditative state. Anyhow, if you want to ask a technique, though to the higher state, there cannot be any technique. But to begin with, in the right, you must rise in the early morning before rising sun, taking a proper bath, sit properly with crossed legs, so that you can sit for 1 hour or 2 hours. In the beginning, you may start for 15 minutes or half an hour, but ultimately you have to gradually increase the time. You can fix your consciousness either in the heart center or in the Agya Chakra or in the crown center. And you just watch the thinking process. Don't think anything, don't repeat anything. You just be in a state of awareness, be in a state of witness, and think that I am not the body. If there is any activity in the physical body, I am not doing it. This is the byproduct of the physical body. So I am not involved in the physical action. If there is emotions or feelings, watch it as a witness and feel I am not the astral body. The emotions, the feelings, these are the activities of my astral body. If any thought comes, think it. I am not the thinking. I am not the thinking process. I am not the thinking body. I am not the mental body. This thinking, thought process or chattering of the mind is coming from my mental body. So I am a Sakshi. Sakshi Cheta Kevalo Nirgunasya. I am just watching the activity of my lower vehicles. And one thing I tell you, if you practice this way, impartial observation, as a Sakshi, as a witness, within a short period, say 3 months or 6 months, if you are continuously watching, then the greatest achievement will be, you will have the understanding that you are not the body, you are not the mental body, you are not the mind, but you are the watcher, you are the Sakshi, you are the Atman, you are the soul itself. And as he said, that we cannot know him, the God. We cannot know the Paramatma until unless we know our own original self, Atma. Without knowing the Atma, state of silence, slowly and slowly you will see, because you have withdrawn yourself. Previously we have been thinking, we have been chatting, we have been involving in the thinking process, but we have withdrawn ourselves. The thinking is still going on for some time because the vibrations in the mental body will stop. And when it will stop, there is nothing to observe at the lower level, there is nothing to observe at the mental level, there is nothing to observe at emotional level, and you are very much alert and awake in the perceptive state, then you will have intuitive flashes. Even the scientists, even the research in the modern science takes place when the intuitive flashes comes, when the mind becomes standing still. A scientist or a doctor, when he is engaged in the research of the medicines, at the mental level he will not be able to find out the solution. He has done his level best at the mental level, but he is unable to find out the solution. The solution will come through intuitive flashes. Even the new research in the modern science, the capsule, Lord Buddha could have given the capsule and distributed to everyone, and everybody could have become Buddha. But it's the most difficult thing. Most difficult thing. We ourselves has to do it. And until unless we lay down a foundation, until unless we live a particular way of life, that I is the most essential thing, and which is most difficult. The easiest way is just to offer a flower to the deity, offer some agarbatti, repeat some mantra, do some exercises, do some in-breathing and out-breathing exercises. It's very easy. But when we are discussing, when we are indicating that you have to be in a state where there is no action, but in a perception state, most difficult thing, sir. Most difficult thing. But it will become easy. It will become easy. The perception will become easy if we are free from this lower mundane world. And to become free from the lower mundane world, discrimination, understanding, insight is the only process. By force you cannot come out of this world. Because so much attraction of wealth, power, possessions, positions, name and fame. If someone has told us something, we are very much right. It is said one can digest tons of appreciation, but he cannot appreciate even ounce of criticism. So very difficult. So when you are free from criticism and praise, you have no attachment with that, because you know this all are purely temporary. You are not also attached with the mundane thing. And the need is not a problem. Again, one person may say, then what does it mean that we should not earn money? We should not have the house? No, we should have earn money. We should have the houses. We should fulfill the needs of our family. But somewhere we must be able to put full stop. But unfortunately, we are not able to put full stop. I tell you, I out of my own experience, I tell you, the need is not the problem. The greed is the problem. Limitless greed is there. No, I am an ordinary minister. I want to become a prime minister. I am having a 2-3 rooms house, but I want to have a palatial building. I have an old model car, but I want to have a big latest model car. If I have that, I want to have an aeroplane. There are persons those having private aeroplanes. So there is no limit for this greed. What we are telling that whatever is needed for our sustenance of the life, which is most essential thing. If the body is died, then we can't perceive the spiritual path. The body has to be sustained. But all the time we are caring and the body only, or the house and car and this and that, and not thinking about the higher, deeper aspect of life, then we are lost. So by way of discrimination, by way of insight, by way of understanding, and that understanding, not the bookish understanding. Books will give the information only. And that information which we have gathered from the books is a borrowed knowledge. When we put it into practice, then it is transmuted into wisdom, then it will become our own understanding. And when it become our own understanding, then there will be no pain. So we have to apply will, wisdom and love, all the three. So for example, some persons know he is a diabetic. He knows that sugar, sweet is bad for him. But when the sweet comes on the table, immediately his health goes, the bodily temptation. At that point, he knows it, that this is harmful for me. But then he should use the willpower. This is another instrument. So we have many faculties with us, sir. If we apply those faculties, the will, the wisdom, the love, then there will be no problem. So this is a real issue.
I would like to ask you one thing. You were asking about self-purification. Self-purification is the process
Right.
to attain the level.
This is one of these steps.
And then you were referring to some initiation process will start
Initiation.
automatically
Yes.
or some kind of.
Right.
So it sounds very miraculous.
Miraculous because it is not within your knowledge, within your understanding. It has not come in your experience. It may be miraculous. It may appear as a myth. But I tell you, we are living in a dark universe. Your question is over?
That's
Oh.
Is it real? Attainable in
Yes.
today's context?
Your
also?
question is that it looks miraculous, it looks rotating and revolving around the sun. The leisure, the savage person will not believe it. Here and here, there. I am not talking about those things. I am talking about the invisible masters, invisible forces. Like in corner, you can see one of the master photograph, last corner. So they are there, sir. They may have left their physical body, but the physical body is not the master. The real entity inside the individual consciousness is the master. And that individual consciousness may appear before you in any form. He may guide you. So that's this path of initiation. Because you are a newcomer in the theosophical subjects, that's why you are raising this question. Don't mind, we don't mind. You have it all right, but I tell you, if you can believe me, why should I tell you? Why should I bluff you? I seek nothing from you. I don't even expect a flower from you. I don't expect any appreciation. But whatever I am telling, that there are adepts, Mahatmas, Sufis, Avtaras, invisible entities, supreme, those who have reached to that level, and they are there to guide us because we are their younger brother. They say, no, we are here to help you. Some of them have entered into bliss, some of them has entered into moksha or nirvana, but some of them, they have still maintained their unique spiritual entity, like Gautam Buddha. He has maintained, he has renounced in nirvana. He says, until unless there is a single person on this earth who is entered into nirvana, I will not enter into nirvana. So he is waiting for us and he is helping us, guiding us. Masters, two masters, those who have started Theosophical Society, Master Bodhi and Master Kuthmi, they are there. So that purification and the love. If we have these four qualifications, even for 40%, Master does not, we cannot find him. We cannot search for him. He will find him. He will come to you. That is the way. That is the, in the occult way, when the disciple is prepared, the guru or the teacher will appear. That is the real occult system. So, sir, this is not a miraculous or a myth. It's a fact in reality. You may not believe it, and you should not believe it. Right belief should be there. But when we are telling that you can practice these qualities, you can practice these virtues, and if you are really able to lead a particular way of life about which you have been talking, you will come across to them.
That our body will be clean, with clean, dress, with clean, good washing, body is clean. But body is also not the physical body alone. It has got an astral body, that